So in the last video, we talked about subsetting out the United States data, but I wanted to talk about if you wanted to subset out a couple of different countries. So here I picked out some EU countries, Portugal, Spain, France, you can read them, okay? And I essentially just created a list of those countries and saved it as some EU countries. And then now when I go through and pull out from the world data, I just said pull out the region where it's equal to any of these countries. So that's going to give me a data set called Europe. And again, that might not be inclusive of all the EU countries, but for this particular graph, apparently that's what I want. So I've got my Europe data over here in the top right-hand corner, and now I can create my plot. So again, I'm using the maps data, so I have to specify the data set here and the latitude and the longitude before we get started. Then I'm going to say geom polygon for this particular thing. I want group is equal to group, okay? And then I think I did fill is equal to region so that each of the different countries is a different color. Let me pop that out for just a second. Again, I've remembered to use the aspect ratio and keep that consistent. So if I do that, that should give me a plot of Europe, or at least of the countries that I asked it to spit out, okay? And then if I say here that I want the fill to be the region, okay, then it's just going to take each of the countries and color them a different color. Okay, there we go. What you might want to do is you might want to also, you know, if you had some data associated with this, you could have the fill be some other, you know, characteristic about each of these countries. That could be GDP or population or some characteristic about their health. But that's sort of how we can fill in the values. For the US, we might want to, like I said, you might want to actually go through and pick out some values. Unfortunately, there's no data contained within the world map data. It really just has information about the countries and where they're located, latitude and longitude. So I pulled some data. I'm trying to remember if we've worked with this data before, but there's some data that's built in about the tidyverse package about arrests. So let me just run this so you can sort of see. So the arrest data, when we originally look at it, let me do it in here. If I do US, oops, head US arrests, it looks kind of weird because here this first column isn't actually named region or state or whatever it is. It's just the names of the rows. So this is just my Cody code to turn it into this first column, actually creating a new column here that's actually the region, right? So all I've done is stolen the name here and put it here so that we can play with it. So again, don't worry about that too much. We're just getting the data set up to be able to use it, okay? Then what we're gonna do is I'm gonna pull in the states map. So I'm gonna do map underscore data, and then rather than pulling the world, I'm gonna pull state, because state gives me the state by state information, right? So if I pull that and run that code, you'll see states underscore map is gonna be over here, and you can see all the different information for each of the different regions, or in this case, states. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to go through and join these two data sets together, right? So I'm saying that here for Alabama, right, I want to join this information here with all of the information on this state's map for Alabama. We're going to talk a lot more about joining data together, but this should at least get you started. So essentially, I'm joining together states map. That's the information about how to graph the map of the US with the states, and then I'm joining it together with arrests, which is my data set here that has a bunch of information on murders and arrests and rapes in each of the different regions. And I want to pair that data based on region, right? So I called this region here, right, meaning state, and I called in the states map data, it's also called region. So they're gonna match up. Okay, and so this is going to create this new data set called arrest map, and you can see the head of it here, right? So for Alabama, it's going to now have the information about all of the points, so where it should plot points in order to get a map of Alabama, and then it's also going to be associated with some data that represents Alabama. Okay, so we're ready to create our graph. So from here, I've got ggplot. I'm going to use my data set ARETSmap. That's the one that has the information about the maps and about some data for each of the regions or states. For my aesthetics, I want the longitude and latitude, and I'm just going to tell it right away that I want to group it by group. Okay, so make sure that you know, Alabama stays all together and whatever. Okay, then I've got geom polygon, and I want to fill each of these by murder. Okay, so how was it, number of murders? Yes, I think it was number of murders, maybe in a certain year. I'll have to look that up, what that actually meant. I think maybe we can do this. Nope, I'll have to look it up later for you. Right, if I didn't include this, it would just color them all the same. So let me just do this here. So there we go. Now we've just got a map of the United States and we can see each of the different states. But if I add in this extra aesthetics with the fill being the murder rate, now we can shade in each of these regions based on the number of murders or the murder rate. And again, I should get more details of that so I could put it on the plot so I could be clear to whoever I was presenting this to. And again, you can add more things, like you could add specific points. Maybe those are state capitals, or you know, we could highlight and name all the states or certain states so that you could pick them out. But that should give you a good start at being able to add some data to a graph. And you'll get better at it, especially as you get better at doing these joins. So for now, I'll probably provide you with the data just so you can practice making the maps. But soon you'll be able to pick out your own data and create your own maps, which will be pretty cool. Again, this is just sort of an overview of a couple of different packages, the map package and the Our Natural Earth package, that are a good place to start for looking at maps, but there's tons and tons of different ones out there. T-maps, USA maps, and you can plot all kinds of different things on here: roads, water, like lakes and rivers, railways, things like that, as long as you can find a package that contains that information. So there's lots of information out there. I've also included a couple links to a few more tutorials that might give you some more suggestions for being able to customize these things in terms of labeling certain counties or places, or if that's helpful.